Hello and welcome to another Star Citizen podcast. I'm your host, BoredGamer, and I'm joined here by a Christmassy, lovely Zinnia. Say hello, Christmassy, lovely Zinnia.
Hello, Christmassy, lovely Zinnia.
See, it's not the same joke we make every time. If we change it slightly, it's always a new joke. It's perfect. So, today I wanted to talk about a year in review for Star Citizen. Doing a bit of a special episode, literally talking about what's happened, sort of major highlights throughout the year, and where we've come from since the start of 2023 to the now end of 2023. And I suppose there's still more to come, but we'll get onto that. We're going to be omitting Valentine's Day and Triggerfish and First Contact, the sort of minor events throughout the year, because there's dozens of them and they're all pretty minor things, yeah?
Yeah.
Out of all of the Valentine's Day and Triggerfish and First Contact and all the other ones, St. Patrick's Day, do you have a favourite of those minor events?
Not really, no.
No?
No, they're too minor to care about, really, for me.
Don't you have a special edition of Valentine's Day Hornet?
Yeah, and I think it's rubbish.
Okay, perfect. That is not what I thought.
I prefer the original one. I like the decal on the side, but I prefer the loadout of the original Hornet.
Okay, yeah, it's a... I think it's a specialist ballistic loadout for the Masters of... No, it's not. Was it the Masters of Flight series? No, it wasn't. It was just for Hornet Heartseeker for Valentine's Day, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't feel like it has as much pew as I like, so...
Yeah, fair. So this year's in, we had 5 major patches.
Ooh.
I know, sort of. Well, I mean, it depends on how you want to qualify them, but we'll jump into it and we'll sort of talk about some bits and bobs as we go through. So, March 2023, we had Alpha 3.18. The previous year, I think we only had 3.17 as a patch and then load of point patches for it.
Mm.
And some people, well, we were expecting 3.18 by the end of the year, or if not earlier in 2022. It didn't arrive, and we sort of got 3.18 and quite a big patch for the first quarter of 2023. And this contained cargo updates, which were pretty important, hull stripping for salvage, persistent entity streaming, which is a core needed feature for like server meshing and a ton of other stuff, as well as the Vulture and the Scorpius Antares. So the hull stripping stuff for salvage, super important for the game. Actually, pretty good implementation. What did you think of hull stripping?
Oh, I enjoyed it. I'd like to do some more.
Well, we'll talk more about that in a bit then, because we've got more to do with salvage. As of 3.22, if a bit basic implementation. So hull stripping salvage, actually really great implementation, having the ability to strip hulls of various ships and locations for them spawned and missions for them and all this sort of stuff. It was pretty good fun. You got the Vulture as well, which is the light salvage vessel, but also got the ability to deal hull stripping with the turrets in the Reclaimer. There was a problem with 3.18 though, Zin.
Yeah.
It was broken. It was one of the worst patches we've had for accessibility. It was hard to log on. It was very unstable. There were just a ton of problems that basically meant a lot of players just couldn't play. And when they wanted to play, they had a interrupted experience at best.
I think I remember I just couldn't get in at one point. It just wouldn't it wouldn't unstow my character or something like that. I could not log in at all.
There were problems with inventories and spawning ships, and just doing the most basic of things were just sort of balked and broken, and the servers would get into an awful state. It was pretty bad, and a large part of it was persistent entity streaming, which caused all these issues. And Cloud Imperium basically went, we had told you multiple times before that persistent entity streaming is going to cause a load of problems in the servers. As we test it, we'll refine it, we'll get through it. It has caused a lot more than we expected, and it's a necessary step in getting server meshing in, a replication layer in, all this sort of stuff that they're so close to actually getting in game now. It was a big step back for the game in actual playability of it for players. While getting this new tech in. And I suppose that's one of the problems with Star Citizen in general, right? It's one of the perils of the development of it, is that they may add some important tech which actually degrades what we see as the playable game in the short term. So do you think that 3.18 was a failure because of that, Sin? Or do you think, well, actually not a failure because they got persistent entity streaming in and it's actually sort of working now?
I think it was a failure, personally, because I couldn't play it.
So the failures of that have inspired the new systems for the preview builds and the EPTU stuff that they put out. So there's lots more layers of protection for players being able to play in the live build or play in the more test environments, and not bring those features to the live builds until they are a stable enough level. And hopefully Cloud Imperium have learnt significantly from that experience. Let's move on to May. So this is going to be 3.19. Much better as a patch. Still broken. Still pretty broken.
Mm-hmm.
A lot more playable though. It just had a load of bugs, a load of problems. Still problems with spawning ships. Still problems with stability. And some login problems, but not as many. It was significantly better. And in fact, if they had released 3.18 in that state, I would have been a lot more forgiving of the state of 3.18. But no, 3.19, a lot better. Still broken. I think we were still having problems playing it regularly. But we did get the new tutorial at Area 18. We got the very cool attach-detach tractor beam feature, which allows us to sort of loot components from ships, but also stick them on our own ships. This is pretty cool to add to salvaging, right?
Yeah.
Because you got the ability to loot cargo in a much better way with the updated cargo mechanics from before, and they added the ability to find boxes on ships, especially sort of when you go to salvage sites, but just on all ships. Something that I've just realised that I skipped over with 3.18 was soft deaths with the updated cargo mechanics. So soft death is one of the best features they've added to game, but it's a temporary feature. So soft death being ships, when they get destroyed, having that artificial health pool reduced to 0, they aren't exploded destroyed, they are just permanently disabled. And players will be alive on them still.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't operate them. That does mean that you can board them. That does mean that you can still loot from them, and their loot hasn't exploded out of their ship. You can continue to shoot them and explode them. So I remember playing Xenothreat, and it was so fun to have soft deaths with that, because 3.18 was crashing and buggy, and I'd crash out while playing Xenothreat, come back in, and I'd been destroyed. But I was still alive in the burning wreck of my ship. It makes sense that this is steps towards what they want with physicalized components and all those systems and the resource management system, but it's a temporary solution to that, which gives us a lot of that gameplay and what it will be like to some degree.
Also piracy.
Also, it legitimizes piracy. But I think a lot of this stuff was overshadowed by the fact that a lot of it was relatively unplayable in 3.18. So yeah, with 3.19, as I was saying, we had the attach-detach feature, we had the tutorial, we had Lorville 2.0. They basically went, let's make the city pretty.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think of that sort of updates in? Was that something you were like, oh, wow, this is awesome, I want to see other areas like Area 18 get updated like this? Or is it sort of like, it was cool?
No, I think it was great, because it brought it more into being more like microtech, where you could sort of fly a bit closer and not get just instantly booped away sort of thing.
It's got the same sort of quality as Crusader and Microtech, and that's all, and Hurston's now aligned with that. However,
it was greatly performance restrictive.
Well, nowhere near as performance restrictive as 3.22's been with the settlements there, but yes, it was pretty aggressive to performance. It was like when they first put Orison and Crusader in with the gas clouds, when people going there. It nom up all of your frame rates. So 3.19, better, still broken. We had Fleet Week as well, and that put out the Fury MX, and the Lynx. So the Furies, these cool little snubs that are absolutely tiny, can fit in loads of different ships, and just have a load of weapons and a cockpit. That's sort of it. And then you had the Lynx Rover as well, which was sort of like the slightly more luxurious version of the Ursa Rover. Fleet Week, obviously a huge money-making event for Star Citizen, because they go, let's sell some combat ships, and let's concept some, let's sell some new things. So Fleet Week, big money-making event for CIG each year. They make several millions of dollars. At this stage of the year, they weren't doing amazingly well financially compared to the previous year. They're doing well. They're doing the second best year ever sort of thing. But it was will they beat previous year's funding again this year, and it looked less likely.
Yeah, I think that was mostly down to 3.18 being such a failure.
Yeah. And think about it, I think you're right to call it a failure. They got important stuff done, and to be critical of CIG with that, it felt like they should have had stuff in place that should have been tested more in the PTU and whatever, but they have learned from that process. So yeah, we had Fleet Week as part of the 3.19 cycle, and then it was a while until we had 3.20, which is actually relatively recently in September.
Mm-hmm.
So September, we saw the beautiful station of, I can't remember what it's called. Why can't I remember what the station's called, Zin? It got replaced with Seraphim Station.
Port Olisar?
Port Olisar. Oh my god, I'm so sorry, Port Olisar. I love you. You're our fave. So Port Olisar got replaced with Seraphim Station, finally, with a updated, modernised modular station. Port Olisar being an old legacy station, and the first station we had in game, and the first location most people will remember in the Star Citizen persistent universe. Well, what do you think of that? Did you think they should have kept Port Olisar in at all? Or do you think they needed to update its Seraphim Station and it was just a legacy item?
I think it needed updating. It needed to be able to, like, obviously one of the reasons they did it was so that it could do all the things that the other stations could do.
Yeah.
And also, as they brought new things in, these other stations were modular and they could add stuff to it, whereas Port Olisar was very restricted in what it was. It's unfortunate that they couldn't have just added to it or like made slight changes to make it like that, but I guess they decided this is probably the easier route and the more sensible route.
Yeah. I'm hoping that we see it as a map that we can use in sort of Arena Commander or something.
Mm-hmm.
That would be quite fun. Talking about Arena Commander 2.0 came out. Basically, they went, let's overhaul Arena Commander to make people want to play it again. And they sort of updated the maps, they updated the ships, they updated what you could do in it. Really good implementation. They did miss out my key feature that I wanted, which was multi-crew. Multi-crew Arena Commander is now in the 3.22 patch, but we'll come to that in a bit. We had further physicalization and updates to cargo. And with that as well, we have the Hull C. But the physicalization of cargo here is a lot more nuanced, allowing for stacking of cargo in a lot better ways and sort of like the stuff sticking to the cargo grid better than it had previously. Hull C actually finally in game, one of the ships that Cloud Imperium sort of teased a lot over several years, and finally it was ready for prime time. But there are some problems with it loading. It's quite big. They added the Fury LX to the game, so the third variant of the Fury. This was a significantly better build. This was a very playable Star Citizen build. It was like night and day compared to 3.18, 3.19, 3.20 when Zin and I started to play it a lot again, or at least a reasonable amount. What do you think of 3.20 overall? Yeah,
it was good. I think it had a lot of needed improvements performance-wise. Whatever they did worked.
Yeah, that's fair. Something else we got was the golden tickets. Early mid-October, we got the golden tickets and platinum tickets for the F8C Lightning. This caused a bit of controversy, though. So F8C, people saying, oh, it's never going to be sold. It will never be sold by CIG. It's a ship that you get when you get to a certain point in Squadron 42. You get access to it in the verse somehow. You might have to buy it in the verse somehow or whatever. But Cloud Imperium, they decided with this golden ticket event to put golden tickets in the verse on bodies and boxes that you could find in various missions or whatever. But the easiest way I found of getting them was to go to bunkers and to search around. You find a golden ticket on a body or in a box, and then you could take that to a rental kiosk, and basically you got to use an F8C Lightning for a day. But you could also purchase one with those tickets. So what did you think of that, Zin, with Cloud Imperium selling the F8C?
I eventually came round to the opinion of it's fine.
Yeah.
Because they never said that they weren't ever going to sell it.
So there's a lot of... So before people start angrily typing on their keyboards, that's how I type angrily. There's been a lot of stuff said by CIG about this and assumed by the community about this. It depends on how you define exactly what CIG said, because a lot of people will watch the exact same stuff when I thought I had debunked it, saying, no, that actually says this, and rather than this. So it is vague on what they said based on how you interpret it. But Cloud Imperium basically going, the plan's not to sell it, and I think at one point they said, a dev said, this is the one we're never going to sell. Look, you're going to get this when you get to a certain place in Squadron, and then they gave it to Concierge, top-tier Concierge backers got a sort of free one with a particular skin, and eventually they basically went, look, it's ready now, we want to get it out to the community in some way, and this is the way they're doing it. So whether or not people think it's a broken promise from CIG, or they don't care about it, or they say, no, they never said they weren't going to sell it, the fact is they are selling it, and I think that the messaging on it was far too vague from CIG. But they always reserve the right to change the mechanics there, the way they do their monetization or whatever. I messaged CID, I tweeted them about it a while ago, saying, are you going to be selling the F8C at Fleet Week earlier in the year? And I was told, no, definitely not, which is true because they sold it later in the year. So yeah, it's I think it's an interesting one, and I think even now people will be in the comments like, no, they definitely said they would never sell it, and yes, they said they were, look at this. But yeah, so it is something that you can be critical with CIG from, that they were vague with their messaging about all of this. And is there some of their monetization relatively predatory? Potentially. It does focus on FOMO. It is very much these ship sales, FOMO, although you're not missing out on much because the game's not released yet beyond alpha, and every year you have access to be able to purchase these ships, and you'll be able to get them in game, whatever. But it is part of their monetization model, and it's a successful monetization model. There was also platinum tickets, which were a bit more interesting. So you could find these platinum tickets as well. If you picked up a platinum ticket, which were typically started off on CIG devs, everyone on the server knew where you were, and they were going to try and kill you to get that platinum ticket. Because if you got that platinum ticket to a ship purchase kiosk, you got a F8C on your account and an exclusive skin for it, I believe, free. It was just, bam, there you go. That is entirely yours. And what did you think of that whole event, the golden ticket and the platinum ticket events?
I thought it was cool. I think they should do more stuff like that.
Totally agree. I think really, really cool way of getting ships into the game. Really cool way of generating hype. And I think that hype led to a really successful 3.21 and CitizenCon.
I do think that they should perhaps have more things like this platinum and golden ticket thing, but maybe have it slightly different for different ships, because I can understand combat for an F8C, but I wouldn't want to try and get myself a platinum ticket because that sort of stuff just stresses me out.
Oh, so maybe you get, if you complete a really hard mining mission, you could get a platinum
maybe
ticket.
Something like that, yeah.
As a like a random reward, as like a rare reward or something.
Well, just have it as a limited event that would only happen at certain times. Because obviously, with the platinum ticket, so what they were finding with the people were just going out, oh, there's a dev, I'm going to go shoot them. But they wouldn't have a platinum ticket. And they had to basically say, look, the event's not on unless the game says the event's on. So please don't go around killing random devs.
And people were inviting devs to like, oh, would you like to come on to our special 890 Jump podcast we're doing in-game to try and get a dev there to shoot them? There was loads of stuff like that going on. And like, the devs don't have them unless the event's running, and then it's only a specific dev. That's amazing. But yeah, I totally agree with you. Like, there needs to be potentially less stressful ways of getting something similar in the future, and different ways of different paths for it. So yeah, F8C, that's a combat ship. That's sort of fine. But for mining ships, I don't want to have to go through the same sort of heavy combat rigor. Then we had 3.21 and CitizenCon in October. With 3.21, tons of new missions and the Spirit A1. We also had jump points turn up. Not the actual jump point mechanics, but there was the Pyro jump point and all these other jump points, Pyro, Magnus, and Terra, assumedly, that were found in-game. They sort of were found in the PTU, and then they went, it's a feature. I was like, okay, cool. And so people were like, oh, they're going to be showing Pyro or something really interesting at CitizenCon. And these were sort of interesting locations. And there was a load of quality of life stuff here. 3.21, a lot of spit and polish. Yeah, as I said, tons of missions as a focus. And then this led into CitizenCon. And we got to see some of the best stuff I've ever seen from Star Citizen. What did you think of the engine demo they showed in? And basically this was showing off the dev branch of the game and everything that the dev branch can do now. What did you think of that engine demo?
I mean, pretty impressive. I'd quite like to have access to that sort of stuff for making footage. Thank you, please.
Thank you, please. Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's pretty cool. They showed off some really cool tech and animals, the space whales, the cows, everything from a fantastic camera shot. sort of the graphics looking the best they can look, and like amazing water effects, some cool ship destruction, that sort of stuff. I mean, it wasn't perfect. There's like, and later on they did a better take of it, which has now since been released. And there was a weird thing with when they were showing the blood, sweat, and tears tech.
Yeah.
The character there, basically standing there a bit confused, sweating, and then got a nosebleed. It just looked like the guy had a stroke. It was like, oh, that's pretty dark. But yeah, they showed off some cool stuff with quantum effects and jumping to Pyro and Pyro Station there. And this is all part of what was later to be revealed to be the Pyro Playground, the stuff they showed in Pyro, which is part of the preview layer, a new way of putting features into the game. That they go, this is the preview layer. It's like the EPTU, like the test build, but it mirrors the current, what's on the live build, mostly, and we're going to test it out in that sort of environment, and then put it out to the live build once it's got enough once it's been tested enough, once it's been refined enough. So sometimes you get super early features here, but really this is going to be Pyro Playground, this is going to be the replication layer, there's going to be server meshing, it's going to be stuff like that. People at Citizen Content got to play the Pyro Playground a little bit later. Zin and I got to play Pyro Playground. What do you think of it?
Yeah, it was good. I'd like to give it another go. Apparently it's going to be coming back.
Yeah, we're expecting Pyro Playground and replication layer tests again before the end of the year, probably to a wider audience. That was the suggestion. Other CitizenCon news: Squadron 42 feature complete. So we saw some cool trailers and stuff for Squadron. They go, look, wow, there's some cool stuff here. It's actually really a game. It's feature complete now. It's in its polishing phase. No release date yet, but it's getting there. What that means for Star Citizen, though, is that they are bringing a load of the teams that were working on Squadron 42 to the Persistent Universe. So they're going to be working on the Persistent Universe, and they're going to be bringing all of the Squadron 42 features over the next 12 months into the Persistent Universe as well. What do you think of that as an announcement? Is it like, doesn't really mean anything until we've got those features in our hands? Or is it, well, actually, this is going to be a big speed up to development, a big boon?
I mean, it's feature complete until they decide to put in more features.
Okay. Oh, no, fair. I mean, yeah, so the polishing phase for Chris Roberts could literally be, well, if we need to add anything else, we'll do that. And what does polishing actually mean to them? Does that mean the game's going to be in our hands at the end of 2024? Or is it going to be a 2025 release? Is it, well, actually, it's going to be a lot of what we'd consider polish, but that's also a whole new lighting engine, or this new feature after Vulkan, or VR support. And some people are expecting VR support for Squadron 42 in its initial launch, or to be on console and things like that. We're like, is it? What's happening here? So feature complete's great, but it doesn't mean release date.
But it does mean that technically the features that they have complete in Squadron 42, as they say, are now going to be making their way into the Persistent Universe.
Yeah, and some of them are pretty cool. Like just seeing the updates to AI and the FPS stuff and all the ship combat stuff. And this sort of leads on to as well that some of the stuff they've been showing throughout the year and showed off a lot greater detail at CitizenCon, like the resource management system. So this is something that's been core for this year that Cloud Imperium have been working on, and it's basically the circuitry of ships, physicalized components, life support, gravity on ships, engineering, mechanics, damage control, and it's a load of quite exciting content that allows for true multi-crew, but also combat targeting of subcomponents and repair and just a ton of stuff. Are you looking forward to the resource management system, or wouldn't you mind if it was like a super gamified placeholder for ages? What's your sort of position on this?
I mean, resource management is going to be cool, I think, but
yeah,
I just hope that it is going to bring with it good gameplay.
Yeah, it could be super simplistic to start with.
I don't want it to be like the whole stripping. Not whole stripping, sorry, the structural salvage.
We'll come to that in a minute. Yes. Yeah. It could be super simplistic at first, but I suspect it will build into something a lot more interesting, whatever, because you don't want something that's too complicated, right?
Yeah.
But you do want something that's got a bit of teeth to it. Something you've got to be good at, you probably want to specialise in.
Yeah.
That'd be my suggestion. So we're hoping it's not all just magic beams. I want the gameplay in there as well, and I want it to evolve, and I want it to be better, but I do want it to be in there to start with, and them to push lots of stuff, and then they can refine it as they go. So that's just my point of view on that, and feel free to have another one. We also saw the Cutter Scout, so the Drake Cutter Scout, We got the Zeus Mark II concept. A lot of people really interested in these variants of the Zeus. I like the idea of the Zeus. It's probably not one for me. CitizenCon, I thought was very successful. Probably one of the best CitizenCons we've had. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I think so.
But did you have a best part of it? Did you have something that was a highlight for you?
The hair.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. They showed off a load of the new sort of character creation stuff and the hair they'd got. There was loads of stuff that they showed. But they went, new hair is coming in 3.22. But before that, in November, we actually had quite a large patch with 3.21.1 that came sort of with the Intergalactic Aerospace Expo. This had some mission stuff and a load of quality of life improvements, which were actually pretty good. And I really liked the Intergalactic Aerospace Expo this year because we got a sort of expanded expo hall with lots of little additions, lots of little scenics, and we had like areas for different roles and jobs. Because you found these literally when we were walking about and went, oh, what's this over here?
Yeah.
And I hadn't noticed them. But yeah, sort of like for mining and cargo, and they had these cool scenes that they'd set up with, this is the mining role, and it's like trying to recruit you. But they also had some stuff like Citizens of Pyro as you came into the station nearby. They had Xenothreat with sort of flyers and graffiti and like stuff. And it was quite nice narrative storytelling. Yeah, I really liked that sort of stuff. We got the C1, which was another one of the spirits. We got the A1 spirit earlier in 3.21. Really liked the C1 spirit. Have not flown it as much as I thought I was going to, but I do think it might be a replacement for my Drake Cutlass. We have the Sulen, which was a very interesting Tier 2 starter ship. What do you think of this vertical ship?
Well, I haven't had a chance to actually fly it. I only really looked at it at the expo hall.
Okay. So I thought this one was very interesting. It's very alien. It's vertically orientated so that you take off like you're a space rocket.
Yeah.
And land in a similar way. And that caused me a lot of confusion, and it makes me feel sick when I fly it, when I try to land it anyway. But it's an interesting one. It's a cool one. Then we also had the Storm and the Storm AA tanks, which I have yet to drive properly. I haven't used them much, but there's not much reason to use ground vehicles in Star Citizen yet.
Yeah.
Although with 3.21.1, I believe that we could actually lock onto ground vehicles as well with other ground vehicles, which is pretty cool with the missiles. We had the Rastra concept. What do you think of this RSI Rastra mining ship?
Yeah, cool.
It's a big miner.
Yeah, I wish I had people to do that amount of mining with.
Yeah, so fair. So mining ops, you want to do with a big group, and you want to do with people you know, really, right?
Yeah.
I really like the Prospector because solo miner works really well. I'm not a fan of the Mole because it requires a reasonable group, and you will have to be relatively efficient at what you're doing to make money that makes it worthwhile using the Mole over using multiple Prospectors. But this is a really interesting ship because it's got a big onboard refinery, and it's got like a garage, so you could have your mining vehicles in there as well. It's a deep space miner that allows you to do a bit of everything, sort of Corvette-sized. Really liked it as a central ship for a mining operation, or doing like a reasonably large mining operation just by yourselves with your crew. But it's certainly one you want to run with your friends. As part of 3.21.1, which is the current live build still, Zin and I played some Siege of Orison. So we had not the best experience with Siege of Orison because the lieutenants wouldn't spawn on our servers.
Yeah.
But we played it relatively late in its cycle. So like a couple of days before it ended, we were playing Siege of Orison, or like a day before it ended.
Oh, yeah, because you were having internet issues, weren't you?
Yeah, so the weekend that people played it on, a lot of people, most people in fact, had a great experience because the servers hadn't degraded at that point. They were sort of working fine. They were spawning the lieutenants. They were able to play through fully with very little, if any, problems, and experience that Siege of Orison 2.0 content because they added a load of stuff and a load of spit and polish and new voice lines and context and sort of signposting and stuff like this. It's great, but Zin and I were unable to experience most of that, 99% of it, because the lieutenants wouldn't spawn, so we couldn't complete the first island properly even.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit of a shame, but it's an alpha for a reason. CIG need to make it so that servers don't degrade like that. But that's something that we might get with the replication layer and server meshing, which might be in very soon. Potentially end of year in testing in some form, potentially Q1 of next year in game in some form, like for the live build, maybe. We'll sort of wait and see, I suppose. That leads us to 3.22, which is the build we're waiting on at the moment.
It's on the PTU, isn't it?
It's
or
on
is it the EPTU?
But functionally in this situation, it's exactly the same as the PTU. but it is a different drop-down name. It is the EPTU. It's open to all backers at the moment. I say all backers, anyone that's got a game package can play that on the EPTU. And the highlights of this one are Zin likes her long hair.
Yes.
So they've updated all the hairstyles to be in line with the Squadron 42 ones. It's not all the Squadron 42 ones, but it's some of them. You really like this shit, right?
I'm glad. Like even the hairstyles that are essentially copies of what we had have been updated to use the that hair mesh.
Tech? Yeah.
Like, I don't think it's, like you said, I don't think it's the full thing. I don't think it's got the full like movement and stuff that they're planning on adding.
Yeah, it's very pendulum at the moment.
Yeah. Still very static and sort of moves together rather than having a little bit of individuality, but it is using the new hair mesh and it does look a lot better.
And just being able to have long hair on characters does make a big difference to the way they look.
Though I feel like you'll be having a lot of players running around with the long hair. Maybe not everyone, but yeah.
Yeah. Why not try it out? I mean, if I had the chance to have long, luscious locks in real life, I might take the chance. I know I'm a beautiful potato, but... So we also got settlements. They've added loads of new locations over Microtech and Hurston, and they've sort of attached some gameplay here. So you can have combat missions here, you can have delivery missions here, and they're cool for exploration. But with our tests in, and even still at the moment, the frame rates are atrocious. They were unplayable.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was just coming into land.
Oh, okay.
Once we landed, it was all right, although there wasn't any gameplay when we tried it.
No.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's an interesting one. We literally had one frame every few seconds, if lucky. And when we're coming into land, that was absolutely awful. It's severely improved now. It's still very performance hungry in a lot of areas. I've not gone to all of them. I've only gone to a couple, but I will check them out once they are in a bit of a better state. They've added gameplay and NPCs actually spawn there and stuff now. So it's our first look. Something else that was here's in structural salvage.
Yes.
So there's a lot of controversy about this because of how simplistic and basic the implementation was and the turning of the Reclaimer's claw into a Hoover array. Naughty noo-noo. So we talked about this before and we were like, we weren't really expecting such a basic implementation and it's a bit boring because of how basic it is. It does, however, allow for the clear up of ships and effectively trash on servers by players. And it is adding to the whole salvage experience, right? It's not taking anything away from it. It goes, you do the hull stripping, you do your looting, you do your taking the actual components off, and then you can also structural salvage and get rid of the ship. Fracture it with your array, and then disintegrate it, suck it in. They improved a load of salvage stuff here as well, with being a large buffer before you actually have to eject cargo containers out as well now, stuff like that, which just makes it all a lot more seamless, the sort of gameplay there, and I really like it. They did say they were going to be improving and updating the salvage mechanics, especially when they get the new Maelstrom tech, which is the ship breaking tech, which is not in-game properly yet, although we did see it to some extent in the CitizenCon engine demo.
But it is very much just basic magic beam sort of stuff.
It's not even a magic beam. So it's not even magic beam. It's like an area effect destruction of ships without their shields on. Actually, it might be powered down. They might have to be fully powered down ships, actually, to stop griefing. So fully powered down ships within this sort of area that you turn on your fracturing will sort of blow up. And then you turn into your disintegration mode, and then you sort of point it at the thing, and it turns it into soup, and then sucks it in. And the only sort of beam is the beam of the suction of the stuff coming into your ship. So
I'd have a little bit of a think about this. I don't mind so much about the fracturing, because you could essentially be sending out like a sort of high pitch sort of vibration in space. Don't make me do science. But I think obviously the claw doesn't work as a claw at the moment. I think it would be great that once you've fractured it, you then have to get the claw to actually grip one of those broken parts.
And that's what it was originally supposed to be, right?
Yeah. And not necessarily like literally crushing it, but literally it has to hold it, or even just having the claw have to attach to the ship, and then it can fracture it. And then it has to grab a part, and then it can turn it into soup.
You just reminded me of something really important that I had highlighted in 3.21.1, but hadn't actually talked about because I wanted to talk about it at the end. Ship scale tractor beams.
Yes.
That was the important thing I wanted to talk about in 3.21.1. So they basically went, bam, ship scale tractor beams now in, allowing the SRV and various other ships. So the SRV was obviously the tractor beam tow ship that actually allows you to tow ships through quantum in that patch as well. But various other ships also got their tractor beams, which is awesome because you can move boxes with them, you can move ships with them, you can move eventually loads of different things with them. But you can manage your cargo bay and stuff with some of them as well. It was a really quite important big feature, and it was not a surprise, but I was expecting it by 3.22. I wasn't expecting it in the 3.21.1 patch. Anyway, going back to 3.22, yeah, structural salvage, cool feature, very basic implementation at this stage, should get more advanced in the future, and I'm not unhappy with it. It is very basic. It adds more to the game. I was expecting a deeper implementation, but I'd rather have it than not. Is that fair? Rather have it than not?
Yeah.
We also got we're expecting the Santokyai and the X1 to turn up in game. Do you think we're going to get that with the initial 3.22 release, the Santokyai, that's your medium fighter, and the X1 series of hoverbikes? Or do you think it's going to be later in the cycle?
I think it's possible it could be later.
Okay.
We really don't know where they are. I assume they currently haven't passed their go, no go.
Yes, I believe that is the case, ? It's hard to tell. And CIG aren't always fully forthcoming with stuff.
Yeah. So it's just a case of like what is left to get them into game.
Yeah.
Is it easily done or what?
But I'm very keen for the 3.22 patch. Loads of quality of life updates as well. There might be other new features we'll sort of see later in another patch watch. Other things that they've been putting into that patch that we might not necessarily have realised. We do know that they're planning to do more Pyro Playground and replication layer tests with after 3.22 goes live. At least that's what I believe. We could have 3.22 as early as later this week go live. Zin and I were talking about it last week, and you thought open PTU at the end of the year, but probably not a live build, which that's still possible as well. It's an effectively open PTU now. It's open EPTU, but it's the same thing. But we'll sort of have to see. We do know that there's Luminalia, which probably will start today at time of recording on the 11th. That will probably go on... Is it the 20th? It's the 20th or the 22nd, which is in law Star Citizen Christmas. So they typically have like an advent calendar and give away gifts for free. And there's going to be like loads of gift boxes you can find in Burst to get money if you hand them in, and Christmas gifts, delivery missions, things like that. There could be some extra surprises.
It is the 22nd.
22nd, okay. And I suppose moving on to the only other thing we've got that we're expecting this year is CIG to release financials and maybe a letter from the chairman. So the financials, they're sort of the previous year's financials, but they do talk about how healthy the company is, and we'll sort of cover that once we see them. Funding-wise, currently, CIG are at 111 million in funding from this year's funding, which is a lot of money. Last year, 113 million. They're 2 million off that at the moment, and I think they're smashed past that, and I think they're hit over 120 million this year. Do you think that's viable? Do you think that that's almost a guarantee that they're going to go past their previous year's
possible.
record?
They've got 3 weeks, so...
And probably a major patch release, maybe, ? I think it might depend on 3.22 being released. If it's released and they have a look at these new ships, we've got the Santokyai and the X1 series, and maybe something else or other things, or even a new concept by the end of the year or something that will easily smash it over. But yeah, I think they've done incredibly well. A lot of gaming studios at the moment are doing terribly, and lots of them closing down or being bought up by larger studios. And CIG are expanding through that period and seem to be getting bigger and better, as it were. Do you think that's sort of fair? Or do you think that we can't actually know truly the state of the studio?
A little bit of A, little bit of B.
Okay.
I'd like to think they've got their stuff under control.
Yeah, that's what it appears to be. Like, they got that massive studio in the UK, which they are now hyper-focused on hiring for. I think they're sort of like going for 1,200 plus employees over the next couple of years. They're really hiring, and they're still expanding, and they've got Squadron 42 to come out, hopefully within a year, maybe ? That's what my hope would be. And then lots of work on that persistent universe, and then potentially Squadron 42 Episode 2 and Episode 3 that they want to be working on, and that StarEngine, maybe they'll license it out to other things. But what do you think of 2023 overall, Sin? Was it a good year for Star Citizen, a great year, or a terrible year?
I think it was better than last year.
Okay.
Last year was very lacking.
Okay. But again, so we obviously had a terrible start to the year with 3.18. But do you think they've recovered that now, and because of CitizenCon and because of the last couple of patches, they're in a good place?
Yeah, easily.
Okay, yeah, that's my assessment as well. I am marking it by the end of the year. They had an amazing CitizenCon. The 3.21.1 patch, pretty good. 3.22 is looking great. I'm loving the fact you can test Pyro Playground on a preview build. Things like that. Experimental game modes as well. The experimental game modes that they've added, which are part of that Arena Commander update for 3.20, but experimental modes, they're still going through. Huge impact to the game for people wanting to test interesting things like master modes, which are another big part of what Cloud Imperium are working on at the moment. But yeah, those experimental modes, especially like gun rush and stuff, very good fun and very cool to get that sort of stuff in game and tested. And we're looking forward to a load more, because you really enjoyed gun rush, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it wasn't too bad to play either, like performance wise and
jank wise. Relatively low in jank, because Star Citizen is now for a reason. Still, it's not even near that beta phase yet, as much as I would like it to be. But I'm interested to know what other people's thoughts are on 2023. Sorry that we sort of jumped in and out of certain patches and went, we'll go back to that. But there's a lot to remember.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm doing it with like half a page of notes, very, very roughly drawn up just before we started the podcast. Because we don't prepare. We don't need to prepare.
No, we're professionals.
We're literally professionals, Sin, but I'm not sure that's saying we're good at anything. Yes, thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a great Luminalia. We will see what happens, because Zin's going to be going on Christmas holidays at some point in the not too distant future.
Yeah.
So she does get time off. I do allow it. I'm interested to know what people think of 2023 in general. Do you think CIG is going to smash past 120 million this year in funding? Do you think we'll see 3.22 by the end of the year? What was your highlight of the year? What was your low light, as it were? Do you think 3.18 was a disgrace? Do you think that CitizenCon was the best thing they've ever done? And tell us what you're looking forward to in the future. Say goodbye, Zin.
Goodbye, Zin.
Thanks for watching this incredibly long podcast, and I hope you enjoyed.
Ho, 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 it's me, Father Nordmus. That's right, it's that time again to see who's on my naughty list for who doesn't have a VPN. No, that's Northern Claus! Grass from Northern Claus, Timmy. You should be scared of not having a VPN. As you know, Father Nordmus punishes all that disobey him. It's the perfect Nordmus present, Timmy. There's no excuse. I can see all of your website history, and I'm going to sell all of your data, Tim.
NordVPN helps protect your online activity, gives you greater accessibility to the content you want by changing your location, and much, much more. Go to nordvpn.com/BoredGamer before Das Northern Claus finds you. Every month we have a Star Citizenship giveaway. For December, we are giving away a Drake Corsair. It's the winner of the 2953 Ship Showdown and one of the stars of the Intergalactic Aerospace Expo. This fantastic multi-role, multi-crew, long-range mission runner can do a bit of everything in-game, and it has a penchant for exploration. Just comment on any of my videos during December to be in for a chance of winning that. There are further details in the description below. A big thank you to everyone that goes the extra mile in supporting the channel via Patreon or the join button under my videos and becoming a channel member. It will net you some exclusive content from Zin and I, but also it really does help us to be able to create daily Star Citizen content, as does sharing these videos and commenting. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the verse.